ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. First of all, as usual, it's a great privilege to be here, and thank you all for inviting me to this special gathering of the 2013 edition of the World Hindu Economic Forum, and also this opportunity to address all of you. I thought to myself as to what I should speak at this forum, because you had an introductory session where you heard once again the aims of the forum, which I had the good privilege of listening to earlier in Bangkok itself, when the preparatory meeting was held here. But at the same time, I notice also that there's been tremendous progress and effort by the organizing committee to reach out to many members who are probably present here in different parts of the world. So my congratulations, first of all, for making this happen and being able to get a large number of people here today. I was told about 450 of you are present. But today, I thought I would talk to you a little bit about what's happening between India and Thailand in the economic scene, first of all, and also what we need to do back home in India, because that's also important, since all of us essentially are people who have these roots, even though you live outside, but there is great opportunity in that country. As an ancient civilization and a country that was founded only in 1947, when we got our independence, as a democratic, sovereign, socialist, secular republic, we have a historical linkage with Southeast Asian region. And this region has been in touch with us for, in terms of pluralism, which has developed here. We've contributed ideas, thoughts, and traditions, in particular Hinduism and Buddhism over centuries. And these have not remained confined to the realm of religion alone, but are now manifest everywhere, in literature, in arts, in architecture, indeed in everyday life, from Borobudur in Indonesia to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Our shared heritage finds a very exuberant manifestation. And in the true celebration of pluralist ethos, people in Southeast Asia have not only adopted these traditions, but have also contributed to them. They have built upon them, and they have also enriched them further. So this close connect between India and Southeast Asia is the foundation stone on which our robust contemporary relations are taking shape today. And India has a low-keys policy, as you all know, and our economic outreach is not just limited to the Southeast Asian region, but also forms the basis of our relations with the Far East as well. And that is why there's a strong partnership today with Japan, the Republic of Korea, both of which have emerged as important investors in India. These are cases in point. So we have all seen a rapid growth phase of the Indian economy, and that had happened after 1991, as you all know. And this was after a radical break came about in 1991, when the past policies were tweaked again, and we looked at an inward orientation. We commenced this process of opening up to trade and to foreign investment once again. And the growth response emerged a decade later, as the cumulative impact of the gradual reforms began to be felt in the investment environment. And that is why India's GDP growth was of the order of 7 to 8% per annum during the last decade. Now, India's contribution to global trade also increased during this period from 1.5% to 2.45%, and that is between 2000 and 2011. Now, the Indian economy is passing through a crucial phase. With our increasing integration in the world economy, it has not remained unaffected from the global economic slowdown. And we recognize the importance of interdependence in the new global economy and its responsibility to reform the institutions of global governance. To put growth back on track, and to integrate at a much faster pace with the rest of Asia and with the world at large. Recently, there have been a number of new announcements, a slew of policy measures which you all know about, which will definitely have far-reaching impact on the Indian economy, both from the micro and macro perspective. So allowing 51% FDI in multi-brand retail, allowing foreign airlines to buy 49% stake in local carriers, 100% FDI in telecom sector, increasing the FDI caps in petroleum and natural gas sectors, the power exchanges, and other sectors are some of the reforms that were announced recently. We all have to have patience. We also know that IKEA's $2 billion investment has been cleared to open 25 mega stores in India, but it's not smooth sailing there either. To kickstart investments, the Cabinet Committee on Investments has been set up to fast-track projects of more than $2 billion. The Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation Lease Resettlement Bill, which has been tabled in the Parliament, will bring greater clarity, reduce uncertainty, and also aid investments. And just 2 years ago, the Companies Bill was also passed in Parliament. So we've tried to create an investor-friendly regime through various policy measures. And the comfort and ease of doing business in India, of course, has to be seen against that backdrop. But there's also been a rollout of a national manufacturing policy, and this is extremely crucial in the years ahead for India. And it is one of the biggest policy initiatives that India has taken, which aims to take the share of manufacturing in our GDP from a very low 16% to at least 25 to 26% in 1 decade, and also create 100 million skilled jobs. The national manufacturing policy, which is meant to give a much-needed boost to the manufacturing sector in India, will also open up large opportunities for companies worldwide. It goes without saying that opportunities abound in emerging India. The 3 core values that I would associate with this resurgence are innovation, dynamism, and adaptability. So we have to innovate to meet our challenges and establish a growth paradigm for ourselves. And we are adaptable, reorienting our thought processes and strategies in tune with emerging opportunities. Over the next 10 years, the demographic advantage and investment into infrastructure will drive the evolution of a resurgent India. Large-scale infrastructure development, one of the challenges that we face today, is bound to transform our airports, our roads, and cities, and that would be a visible symbol of the new India. And those of you who are based in Thailand would be aware of the landmark visit of our Prime Minister in May 2013. And there, our close historical ties, which are based on strong cultural affinities, have shown that politically, relationship can also be influenced into becoming multidimensional, expanding into close cooperation, trade and investment, defense and security, science and technology, agriculture, space, education, culture, tourism, and people-to-people contacts. So we see Thailand also as a springboard for India's engagement with Southeast and East Asia. Thailand remains the vital link in our Look East policy and our strategic partnership with ASEAN. And though our 2 countries have strong economic synergies, our trade and investment levels are yet to reach that full potential that we would like. Bilateral trade, of course, has increased manyfold over the past decade to reach about $9 billion today, which was the figure last year. But we have to reach a target of 14 billion by 2014. And we need to quickly resolve a few outstanding issues that we have to achieve a comprehensive and balanced India-Thailand free trade agreement. Outstanding issues relate to services and investment chapter, wherein we have asked for removal of restriction in commercial presence and market access for independent professionals and contractual service suppliers, including health services, nursing, the Indian system of medicine, enhanced equity cap under various sectors, especially computer and related services, removal of limitations and conditions relating to residence. And we hope to conclude this FTA at the earliest with an ambitious outcome for which there is commitment at the highest level in both sides. We would also like to see enhanced presence of Indian and Thai companies in each other's markets, especially as both countries are planning massive future investments in infrastructure over the next 5 years. And we welcome the participation of Thai private sector in India's plans to modernize and upgrade manufacturing and infrastructure sectors, especially in the Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai, Bangalore industrial corridors. Also the Buddhist circuit and the northeast states of India. And India also welcomes Thai investment, particularly in sectors such as ports and highways, in electronics, automobile components, food processing and power generation, as well as tourism and hospitality facilities. When our Prime Minister was in Thailand recently, the leadership of two countries announced the establishment of a Thai-India Business Forum with the involvement of the private sectors to stimulate expansion of bilateral trade and investments and also to facilitate business partnerships. Our connectivity projects by sea and land will further deepen the linkages and cooperation between India and Southeast Asia. They will support economic development and reinvigorate the historic, cultural, and spiritual links in the region, especially in Northeast India. So we are working together with Myanmar to ensure completion of the India-Myanmar-Thailand trilateral highway project by 2016, and also are pursuing the development of other corridors. The Dawei Special Economic Zone in southern Myanmar, which, if it becomes operational soon, would also further enhance regional connectivity, including port-to-port linkages with India and open enormous business opportunities for the region. The Indian business sector can look at investment in the Dawei Special Economic Zone, especially in the areas where Indian companies have expertise, such as steel, manufacturing, and power, petrochemicals, services, and others. And Thailand will also be organizing a roadshow in India in this respect later this year. Recently, the government of Thailand has announced its plans to spend $67 billion on infrastructure projects for the development of water management systems, high-speed rail, and power production. These projects are expected to improve linkages between Thailand and its ASEAN neighbors, reduce logistic costs, and boost tourism revenue. We would like Indian investors to look at these projects before ASEAN Economic Community comes into being. While the Indian economy is opening up with affirmation of our commitment to economic reforms, regardless of which party, which affiliation is in power, our engagement with the world has become more intense. And it is also a message to our partners, particularly the foreign investors, that they have to look at opportunities that exist in India, particularly in infrastructure, in manufacturing, agriculture, and food processing sectors. And it's my firm belief that forums such as this, when all of you have come together, will contribute meaningfully to the collective endeavor of ours in enhancing trade between all of you and in the world at large. And thank you very much for inviting me again.